All right, so we got the crank out. We're gonna inspect the main bearings right now. Let's take a look. All right, we're back at it with the Evo build. Last time we dropped the shell off to Horns to get the front leg fixed, to get the carbon pieces on, get it all lined up, straightened out real nice. I am here for this. Man, woo. It hasn't looked this good in over 3 years. So in the meantime, I wanted to get this thing inspected, take a look at it. It only had like 76,000 miles when the car was wrecked, but I mean, this thing's pretty tired, honestly. Since day one, this thing has been in track days, autocross, rallycross, just all kind of abuse. So I want to crack into this thing, see how bad it really is inside. I'm gonna take it up to my man Ronnie at Speedlab Performance. Ronnie's built a ton of fast Evos, he builds GTRs, he's got a lot of experience with these motors. Gave me a recipe of how to build this thing up to a 2.2 liter. But first, I mean, we got to take a look at what's inside this thing. All right, we made it here, Speedlab Performance. Got this thing half out, ready for disassembly. Little super action over there. Evo, Evo, Evo. Man, brand new shot. There's the man. What's up, Ronnie?
Sure.
How you doing?
How you doing, brother?
Good to see you. Yo, thank you so much. I know my motor's in good hands coming out here.
Appreciate that, brother.
I mean, jeez. Got GTRs.
Yeah, mostly GTRs. They're actually all engine jobs, which is what I'm trying to sort of stay away from at this point, but it always turns out into, turns into an engine job, so.
Well, perfect. Ronnie's trying to move away from engine build, so let's start an Evo engine build right now.
Let's do it, brother.
But yeah, we're gonna, like I said before, we're gonna drop this thing off in here. We're gonna crack it open. We're gonna see what all we need to replace. I already got all the parts I want to put into it, but this is a real scientist. I'm a pretend internet scientist, so we're gonna nerd out on exactly what happens on high mileage, high usage motors like this. But whatever, man, let's get this thing inside first, get it cracked open. Probably need a bolt for in here. All right, so Ronnie, we're gonna disassemble this thing, and
Correct.
You were telling me earlier that every motor has a story. I'm almost embarrassed as to what this story is gonna be.
It's a 4G63, so I'm pretty sure you're not going to be embarrassed.
Okay,
These
okay.
things actually go through hell and back, and they stay together. I mean, if the tuning is right, if you got good fuel in there,
Yep.
they'll stay together. Yeah, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to disassemble it. So first and foremost, obviously, we're going to take all the accessories off. The only accessories really that you have on this engine right now are going to be the water pump pulley, which there was a piece of something on. There's gonna be the idler pulley. We're gonna take the stock harmonic balancer off. We're gonna take the oil filter housing off. And then of course we're gonna tear the whole engine apart. So we're gonna remove the oil pan. We're gonna remove all the, the head bolts and stuff like that. All the stuff that's attached to the engine that needs to come off before the head comes off. So that would be the water pipe that moves along here, all the way over here to the thermostat housing. So that's the water pipe, but just a discontinued part, believe it or not. This thing is worth its weight in gold.
Damn,
It's,
okay.
pretty crazy, but yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We're about to start tearing into it, man.
All right, so we got the motor flipped over.
I mean, you don't see any glittering or anything like that. You don't see any bearing material, so that's always good. One thing that I always like to that is in the actual pickup tube. So we don't have a light over here, but as far as looking at it like this, it looks good. Not a problem.
Nothing bad in there.
Nothing bad in there. So now, go ahead and take out the pickup tube and then take the baffle out. Ron is most likely going to run a Barroso pan, which is going to have a different baffling than this baffle over here.
It does have some kind of factory baffle though, which is cool.
It does, yeah, but this is just a super basic baffle, and then there's nothing over here.
Right.
Anything.
crucial part fighting rusty parts. All right, so a while back, one of the maintenance items that I had on this car was what's called a balance shaft. Ronnie will explain way better than I will what that provides, but it's a bearing that seized, and my factory belt was kind of just tearing itself up against that bearing and almost got destroyed. Kind of dodged a bullet there. But what we got going on here right now is, well, kind of a fix, but not the perfect way to fix it.
So the biggest issue with performing a balance shaft elimination kit, like installing a balance shaft elimination kit on a stock short block, is the fact that you're using powdered metal rods. So these are powdered metal rods. And whenever the pistons and rods are going together on an engine like this, a mass production engine, they're not exactly balanced to, you know, what we would call balanced to spec.
Right.
Which,
like crazy
at
tolerances.
Our facility would be, you know, less than half a gram of one another. So what we would do is we'll get all the pistons and we'll get all the connecting rods. We'll shave some material off. We'll match the lightest piston to the heaviest rod. And if we need to take off material to get it into that, you know, half a gram vicinity, we'll do that. Usually we end up within 2 to 3/10 of a gram, which is extremely, you know, close. And with the factory stuff, you can be 2, 3, 4 grams off. Because again, these are mass produced engines.
Yeah.
And when you have that going on, you have what I call a balance shaft, especially on a 4-cylinder engine, because there's a lot of harmonics on an inline 4 engine. So on the 4G63, you have a balance shaft and then you have a counterbalance shaft. The balance shaft is driven by the actual oil pump. So there's a gear on the oil pump itself. So this is the oil pump unit. And then you'll have a gear over here, which we just removed. So this will be riding on the actual timing belt. So the timing belt will be spinning this.
Right.
And then you have a counterbalance shaft over here, which you will have a belt connected to the actual crank cog that will be spinning this pulley, essentially. So you have two shafts, essentially, which are altogether about 5 pounds of you know, reciprocating mass. And what that'll do is it'll cancel out all the vibrations. What we're gonna do right now is we're just gonna, you know, clean the deck surface. Just look at the deck surface real quick.
Okay.
Just inspect for any cracks or anything abnormal. And then we're gonna look at the cylinder head real quick. This is an Evo 9 head gasket, so this is gonna be 5-layer head gasket. So we're actually gonna disassemble this head gasket.
Okay.
All 5 layers. We're gonna look at it real quick. We're gonna clean the deck surface. We're gonna look at it and we're gonna see if we notice anything that's kind of off. You guys will notice that these combustion chambers are actually polished and they're actually reshaped. So if you look at a 4G63 cylinder head. So if you guys look at Ron's cylinder head, you guys can see this little like bridge over here. You can feel your finger.
That could become a hot spot, right?
Well, not only the hot spot, but when you remove material from here, you're actually making the chamber bigger.
Right.
So essentially it's increasing the displacement of the engine. Now it might be a little bit, but yes. And yeah, of course it's the hot spot because you have 2 spots meeting each other and they're like a 90-degree angle kind of deal. So if you go back to that and you look at this,
that's way smoothed out
and it's completely polished. So the Evo 9 MLS gasket is a 5-layer gasket, and you want the outer 2 and the middle layer to kind of inspect what's going on. So what you're looking for really is around this combustion area where it seals the combustion chamber.
Okay.
You want to see if there's any, you know, wrinkling or anything like that. That would kind of indicate a head lift situation, which we're not seeing on this, which is not surprising, obviously. This is pretty much a stock car.
Yeah, it wasn't making a crazy amount of power before.
Correct. So like you can see no wrinkling, no wrinkling. You want to look around every cylinder. It's usually going to be around the outer edge of the cylinder, not like towards the next cylinder. Okay. So we don't see anything there. We're going to take another one. So these are going to be the outer 2. So these are going to be basically the top and bottom layers that like sit on the cylinder head. Correct. This is the actual layer that will sit on the cylinder head or the cylinder block. And obviously you can't see anything like this. You can't see anything on this because there's like silicone or whatever the sealant that they use, right? But if you look here, you can still see waving if there is any signs of head lift or anything like this. And most of the time, as crazy as this sounds, most of the time you'll see waving on it, even if everything is still perfect. It doesn't push coolant to the overflow. You don't see anything. You can still see some waving over here. So this head gasket can tell you a story as well. So it's not just connecting rod bearings or the main bearings that tell you a story. It's really everything in the combustion engine that can tell you a story.
Right.
And so this is a factory cylinder head. Obviously, this is a fact. Like not much was modified on this car.
Yeah.
And we can see that everything looks great. And
Nice.
you can see rippling and / wrinkling on a lot of cars that make a lot of power and a lot of cars that don't have O-rings.
But yeah, that's the head gasket right there, which honestly looks pretty good as well. So stoked on that. Just gonna disassemble the last part of the girdle, inspect the main bearings, and see where we lay out. All right, so we got the pistons out, we got the rods out, we got the head gasket inspected. Now the last piece, the girdle.
Correct. So we took the girdle off, and this is the bottom portion. This is, the engine's turned upside down, so the crank is riding on the actual girdle portion of the area.
Yeah.
So you see you see the most wear on the girdle side of the bearings, and what we can see over here is actually not that bad. And we see the typical wear on a 4G63 or any engine that has an oil pump, which is literally every single combustion engine. We see number one with some wear that's just foreign material getting inside the engine, so you can obviously feel that with your finger, but it's not super deep. But
right.
Again, this is something that you just see normal wear. Second one, same thing. Third one, same thing. You're starting to see a little bit of pitting because you're not getting enough oil in there. Fourth one, you're not getting enough oil in there. And then the fifth one is where you see the main wear. And guys, this is why whenever we assemble an engine, usually on the fifth main, we'll grab this a little bit looser, about 1/10 of a thou to 2/10 of a thou, because you have the flywheel, you have the transmission.
Oh,
and
right.
Usually, you're not gonna have the problem of grabbing a bearing. That's not really gonna be an issue. But usually, if we're working with a set of bearings and we have one that's a little bit looser, we'll put that on the end of the crank. The back side, you try to have a little bit more clearance. Obviously, you want to keep everything in line. You want to keep everything perfect, but the reality is not everything works that way. So
that's the thing, because this bearing isn't getting anywhere near the same pressure as this bearing.
Correct.
Which is
And I
why
mean, just
it wears
look at
like
the
that.
wear though.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? These are factory bearings. What we're gonna do first, before we even look at your bearings, we're gonna look at your thrust bearings. This is the actual thrust side. On the sides over here, you see a little bit of discoloration. This is most likely because it's a little bit thicker on this side than it is on this side.
Right.
And we might be talking about half a thousands, but half a thousands in a combustion engine and with bearings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna look at the non-thrust side. Look at that. You have a lot of wear on that. That's from stuff getting in your oil. So when you press on the clutch, this is what gets pressed on, right? So that's the thrust side.
Okay.
This is the non-thrust side. So as soon
so
as you
it
let off the
opens up.
clutch. Not that it opens up, but as soon as you let off the clutch, this is the non-thrust side. So the oil's still riding on the main bearings and the thrust bearings and everything like that.
Okay.
So this is literally a case of dirty oil or contaminants in the oil getting inside your oiling system.
Right.
You know what I
And
mean?
floating around in there and
Exactly.
causing chaos.
Exactly. You guys noticed this firsthand. This is the thrust side, this is the non-thrust side. And the thrust side did not have as much wear as the non-thrust side.
Right.
So this is just a case of, crap getting inside the oil, which is the nature of a combustion engine,
Yep.
And this engine had how many thousand miles, Ron?
76.
76,000 miles. That's a lot of miles.
Yeah,
That's
and
a lot of
not
miles.
easy ones, and in a lot of different conditions.
Sure. So let's start looking at the bearings.
All right, so we got the crank out. We're gonna inspect the main bearings right now. Let's take a look.
So we kind of saw the same paw print basically on the actual block side of the bearings.
Okay.
What we saw on the girdle side. However, on the block side, we did see this this wear over here. So what you guys are seeing, this is a bimetal bearing from the factory. And what you guys are seeing is you guys are seeing the front portion of the bearing wiped out. And, you know, if you go to number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, you know, you guys can kind of see the same paw print. And then on number 5, again, like I said, you guys see that, you know, pitting and all that stuff.
Right, like we saw in the number 5 bearing.
Correct.
On
so
the
on
girdle
number
side.
1, we saw something that was kind of weird to us. And that's, you know, when we're looking at the actual balance shaft, which we don't, a sprocket that we don't even have, we saw some discoloration, right? Which was kind of weird, and this usually doesn't have anything to do with like what we inspect whenever we tear down a short block. But when we looked at this, we saw that number 1 was taking quite the beating. So what I did is, right now I can't find my dial indicator pointer. So what I did is I grabbed it from my BHJ fixture. This is what we use to O-ring cylinder heads. And we have it zeroed out right now. And what I just want to show is how far out a crankshaft can be bent, even if it's a factory crankshaft. Right now it's a 0, right? So as soon as we try to spin it a little bit, you can see that it's about a half a thou this way and half a thou on the other side. You see how it's like half a thou that way?
It's jumping around a bit.
Yeah, it's jumping around, and then if we do this, it kind of like touches the other side, so it's like about a thou bent.
And you think that was from the factory or something that happened later?
No, this is probably wear, or it could be from the factory. This is nothing that we can pinpoint and be like, oh yeah, this was, you know,
right. All right, what about the rear of the crank? What are we seeing here?
Same thing we're seeing on the front. So it was at 0. Once we start moving it, it's all over the place. Combined on both sides, about a thou.
Right.
So half a thou on this side, half a thou on that side. Because it kind of jumps around because we have a needle pointer on here.
Right.
But that's about a thou.
And this isn't your usual setup. This is just because the attachment just isn't on everything.
Correct. I'm just setting this up on a stock crankshaft so you know everybody.
Yeah, so we get a little frame of reference.
Correct.
Yeah,
So this is actually what we use on the BHJ fixture. So this is a super fine attachment that we put on there, but it's still an attachment that like touches the crankshaft. So
for sure.
Up next is cylinder wall. So Ron, I don't know if you can get this, but like on the non-thrust sides, on the side that the piston does not really thrust on, you can see a lot of crosshatch still, and everything is good to go. And to be honest with you guys, I still haven't looked at the cylinder walls at all. So there's a bunch of crosshatch. So if you look, there's a bunch of crosshatch. Number 1, number 2, number 3, it's a little bit more than the rest. And then number 4, it's a little more. And then there's a rust spot over here. So what we can do is we can look at this side as well. This is the non-thrust side. As you guys can see, there's less wear on that side. If you look at that and compare this, you know, this side to this side has a lot less wear, so this is the thrust side. So I apologize for that. That is the thrust side. We're still seeing the same wear mark, but if we look this way, you know, you can still see a lot of crosshatch pattern over here. So this engine is in pretty good shape, man.
Nice.
Like,
all right, so the cross hatching for the most part on the thrust side looks good.
On the non-thrust side.
On the non-thrust side, it looks good. And now,
even on the thrust side, it looks good for an engine that has 76,000 miles.
Right.
So everything in general looks good. When we're looking at the crosshatch, from this angle, you can actually see all the crosshatch. So it's everything's been in good shape. This means, you know, they've used good oil. The engine's been maintained.
Nice. So we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, we are. And on the thrust side, you know, it's pretty typical wear. We do see some of the crosshatch, you know, gone. Yeah. But 76,000 miles, so we're in pretty good shape.
All right, so the verdict, this thing's actually in pretty good shape, way better shape than I thought. You know, obviously we got our little discrepancies with the crank and a few little things here and there, but like we said before, this is gonna go to the machine shop, it's gonna get massaged, it's gonna get torque plated, it's gonna get all the special things done to it.
Torque plate honed with our 4G63 torque plate. We're gonna get the pistons, connecting rods, everything balanced and everything, and we're gonna blueprint assembly it over here. We're gonna have all our bearings over here, so you guys are gonna get to see all that stuff basically.
Sick.
And we're gonna put it together, and it's gonna go inside Ron's car. So.
I'm super hyped to be in here, super hyped to have this thing finally apart, finally with all that stuff going into it later. So I'm gonna head back to Hoonigan. I got a chassis to look at, I got some stuff to do with that thing while this thing's in the machine shop. Got a few more parts to grab. So the next time we come back here, we're gonna be putting all the parts and getting this assembled and getting it looking super nice. So Ronnie, dude, I appreciate it. You're the man. It's been mad educational.
Thank you so much, man.
I'm pumped. This thing needs to run like now.
For everybody that's wondering, no, we don't use this when we're assembling an engine. We use the Chemtech towels, lint-free.
Science brand.
Science, bitch.
Science brand.
So these are clean room level 5 lint-free towels. They're still lint. No matter what you use, you still
There's
gotta
always
blow
gonna
off
be
a-
something.
Absolutely.